Before the lecture, now I request our Honorable Principal Sanjay Garu to introduce the speaker to the learned colleagues.
Very good morning to all of you. Honorable Pro-Vice Chancellor, Geeta University, Hyderabad, Padma Shri Professor Deepak Pathak, born on 2nd April 1948, obtained his B in EEE from GSIST Indore in 1969, M.Tech and PhD from IIT Bombay. He has been serving with IIT Bombay since 1971. He has headed CSE department from 1991 to 94, and he was the first Dean of Resources of IIT Bombay from 1995 to 1998. He was the founding head of annual Reiki School of IT from 1998 to 2002. His research interests are database, information system, software engineering, system performance evaluation, IT-enabled education, and IT strategy planning. He has guided 7 PhDs and over 170 M.Tech students. He started an IT incubator to foster innovation through startup companies. It has now flourished as IIT Bombay's Society for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and is considered the best incubator in India. He also started the country's first interactive distance learning program using VSAT. Using the experience gained in that initiative, he recently completed a national mission project to train 1,000 teachers at one time in several core engineering subjects using ICT through a series of ICT workshops. By June 2012, his efforts had succeeded in training over 20,000 teachers across 1,200 engineering colleges. The national mission has entrusted him the responsibility of training 150,000 teachers in the next 3 years through mega workshops training 10,000 teachers at a time. He is regarded as a pioneer of smart card usage in financial transactions in India. He has developed low-cost speaker devices for use in Indian classrooms and open source multimedia tools for e-learning. In March 2012, he was given the responsibility of executing the prestigious Akash project of National Mission. 1 lakh low-cost tablet computers are to be deployed for engineering education under this project through 300 Akash project centers. Under his leadership, IIT Bombay has succeeded in negotiating an upgraded Akash 2 version at a price of rupees 2,260 rupees per tablet. 14,000 tablets have already been distributed to 250 engineering colleges in the country, and over 12,000 teachers of these colleges have been trained in the educational use of these tablets. He was elected as a Fellow of CSI in 1999, Fellow of IT in 2000. He currently serves the Chairman of National Board on IT Education and Research of AICT India. He has pioneered several initiatives to popularize free and open source software usage. He started the Eklavya project in IIT, which attempts to provide web-based support and projects to foster the growth of collaborating communities across educational institutions. He has been a consultant and advisor to many organizations. He has been IT advisor to SBI, RBI, UTI, IDBI, LIC, New India Assurance, SEBI, and so on. He works on several committees advising central and state government departments on issues related to IT projects. He was conferred Lifetime Achievement Award by Skoch Foundation in 2003 and Data Quest in 2008 and Devang Mehta Business School Award in 2010. He was listed among the 50 most influential Indians by Business Week in 2009. He received the Excellence in Teaching Award of IIT Bombay in 2009 and IIT Bombay Industrial Impact Award in 2010. On 26 January 2013, he was conferred the Padma Shri Award by the Government of India for his services in science and technology. Dr. Pathak believes that teaching can't be just a profession. but has to be one's dharma. His dream is to see India catching up with the world using ICT as a springboard. I have just given very brief from 4-page biography, and I'm very keen to invest his speech later on. Thank you very much.
As part of the Geetam tradition, now I request our Honorable Vice Chancellor to honor Professor B. Pathak, and I request Principal SOP and Principal SOS to join the occasion.
Oh my God. Photographers even make marriages happen twice or twice.
Yes, sir. Now I request Professor Pathak Garu to start this session. Thank you.
Switch off this.
Switch it off.
Projector. There is no projector there, so you can keep all the lights on. Lights on? Red LED light. So good morning, friends. I am indeed honored and humbled by the presence of this large number of faculty colleagues. I spent a lot of time with Honorable Vice Chancellor to learn more about the institution, how it has come up and how it is doing so well. From IIT Bombay, we have a long time relationship with this institution. We are one of our remote centers. Recently, I just realized that I need to quickly update the web profile because there are so many details which are rather old, but that's okay. Today, I wish to share with you my thoughts and thoughts of many people across the world of the changing role of teachers in human life. I'll begin with some fundamental observations which all of you are familiar with, but it is worthwhile to recall because that establishes how the concept of a teacher started. Note that there are no other species which have an institution called teacher, except for perhaps hypothetical characters like Jonathan Livingstone Seagull. You have read that book. You see, most of the knowledge in life, any life form, actually gets accumulated not over centuries, not over millennia, but millions of years, gets codified and is transmitted to progeny genetically. That is how we evolve. In fact, if you look at the extraordinary birth process of a human being, from a single cell to the development of a complete human, you actually go through the entire evolution process, all of which is codified in our genes. What happens is that as the species grow more intelligent, such as human beings considered to be most intelligent, these species start developing new knowledge, start discovering new knowledge independent of the evolutionary process. Now such knowledge does not get immediately captured in genetics, and therefore the progeny does not automatically learn all of that. If that had happened, life would have been so very nice, you know. My son would have been a born programmer, doesn't have to study Java or something like that. But that doesn't happen except for, again, a mythological case like Abhimanyu learning something because Arjuna was talking to someone. But whatever that may be. The fact of life is, human societies very quickly understood that if the knowledge that they acquired and they generated had to be passed on to the next generation, they had to have a mechanism which is very special and peculiar. That is where humanity created this institution called a teacher. The responsibility given to this institution is to ensure that the young of the species get advantage of the codified knowledge, learn things, and also participate in generation of new knowledge. This institution of a teacher was supported by multiple structures. In old days, you will recall, these were temples, mosques, churches, ashrams. Later on, these support structures took the form of formal educational institutions called schools, colleges and universities. But a very interesting transition in nomenclature happened sometime during that. These support structures are now called institutions. So school, college, university is an institution. And the original institution of a teacher has now become a paid employee of these institutions. I personally believe this is a very fundamental derogatory change. Because if I believe that I am an institution created by the society for doing public good, for transforming the lives of you young species, then my behavior will be different. But if I feel that I am an employee of an organization, my behavior will be that of an employee. I would urge all of you to consider this. I fortunately belong to a system called IIT system, where a teacher is still an institution. And rest of the organization is essentially a support structure. It unfortunately does not happen in most other institutions which are hierarchically organized. The kind of freedom that I get in IIT system is so amazing. Whatever I teach is the syllabus. Whatever questions I set in the exam paper is the question paper. And whatever grade I gave, Senate accepts it without any argument. This does not happen elsewhere because of a plethora of reasons. The teachers themselves take the job because they are now paid employees. They take the job exactly as defined by the system. And therefore they will not go out of the way to experiment positively, to learn new things, to attempt new things. Tendency of many places is to short circuit something and make things simplified for themselves and for the system. And that is the reason why system then says, no, you must do it like this, you must follow this syllabus, you must have this, there must be an external examiner. I can't understand the concept of an external examiner. I have taught a class of 100 students. I know what each one has learned. How can somebody else who does not know how I have taught them or what I have taught them come and examine them? But in the conventional university system, that is what happens. I teach, somebody else sets a paper, somebody else does the assessment and gives marks. Now my students are primarily studying to get a good degree and good marks. They will quickly figure out that this fellow Phatak doesn't count. He may teach whatever, but as per syllabus, somebody else will set question paper, somebody else will examine. So I must pay attention to that. And therefore, rather than attending classes, rather than reading textbooks, I will read guidebooks. I will read past university exam papers. Fortunately, with the advent of autonomous institutions, things are coming back to desirable state. But in general, this is the problem. So I'll share with you my own experience. I studied in a college, a good college, but in a small place, affiliated to a university. In those days, there used to be a 5-year program. First year, I studied very hard. I studied the entire syllabus, got about 85% marks, good standing in the class and so on. But I discovered while giving the exams in first and second semester that every question paper said solve any 6 out of 10 questions. Now if I have to solve only 6 out of 10 questions, then I should be able to work with only 60% of my study. I did that in the second year. I still got 85%. I could leave so many things in options. Then in second year I discovered something more interesting. Questions were repeated from previous sessions. In the third year I discovered the art of predicting what kind of questions are likely to come and could substantially reduce the burden of studying. And that is how I could participate in swimming championships, in chess, in dramatics, in debate. I did everything that was possible because my life was made simpler. But I did not learn adequate amount of basic engineering. Then I went to IIT Bombay, and there I found a completely different system. My first test done by G.V. Raj Singh Isaac, who was later on my boss in the computer center. So he announced in the class, there will be a test day after tomorrow. It's an open book test. It will be from 2 o'clock onwards. So I did not understand. Then I went to his cabinet and said, "Sir, which book can I bring?" 3 books. I was so happy. Then I can bring 4 or 5. Then what will be the duration of test? I said 2 o'clock onwards. No, but when does it end? Whenever you are done. I said, suppose I take 3 hours. It was a 1 hour test. I jokingly said 3 hours. Oh, you take 4 hours. I was very happy. I spent most of my time in assembling different books. And then went to that exam. And then I got the question paper. I was expecting solve any 6 out of 10 questions. And the questions also used to be very interesting. Describe something, write short notes on. And then somewhere some problem would be there in the university. Here, there is no choice, nothing. Problem 1, problem 2, problem 3, problem 4, paper ends. So I was nonplussed. What is it? I said, "Sir, there is no option." He said, "What is your option? You have to solve any problem that you will face in life. There is no question of option." Then I started opening the books. Not a single problem has any resemblance to any problem that is solved in any other sense. Spent half an hour going through that. Then I started attempting something. Then I started recalling what he had taught in the class. And he had a very funny habit. It was a small intake program, instrumentation control computers. There was no separate computers that time. Some 15 people in the class. And his invigilation style was very funny. He'll go around looking at what you are writing. And if he is not happy with what you are writing, he will slap you on the back. You have to imagine a tall, strong man with a... I got 2 slaps actually. And he would say, "Not that idiot. Read that book, read that chapter." No, I will read that chapter. Repeat again another way or something. I gave that paper at 6 p.m. from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. And I was not the last man out, there was another joker sitting there. And I went back completely frustrated. I had hardly solved 2 of the 4 problems, hopefully properly. Other 2 I had just attempted, and I was cursing myself, what the hell is this? But when I contemplated, I realized that in those 4 hours, I had learned far more than what I had learned in 1 full semester back home in IIT. Then I realized what IIT system is. I realized that every assessment is actually a learning opportunity. Assessment is incidental. This set my tone when I became a teacher, that I must ensure a couple of things. Number 1, no question shall ever be repeated in my question paper. Number 2, I must make every question paper such that the students must learn something new. And this style, I have learned from stalwarts. I'll give you one more anecdote, equally interesting. Late Professor K.C. Mukherjee was a respected figure in the electrical engineering department. I used to be the manager of the chess team. I used to play chess when I was a student. And although I had become a manager because I was a faculty member, there were some friends who were doing their undergraduate studies, and one fellow was in third year, came one day with a question paper and says, Kotak, how do you solve this problem 3? So, electrical fields. I took that question paper, read that question, immediately understood that I could not solve it. Then I promptly returned the paper and I said, I am a computer science faculty member. He says, no, your basic degree is electrical. Then I admitted, I don't know how to solve it. But now I was a faculty member, I said, why don't we go to Professor K.C. Mukherjee's cabin and ask him? So both of us walked. And as we went to the electrical engineering department, and as we were approaching his cabin, he saw 2 of us coming with that question paper dangling in his hand, he started smiling. And when we came nearer, he asked us to sit down. So, for the question 3, huh? I said, yes, sir. But he wouldn't say anything. So, the student then asked him, sir, what is the right answer? And he looked at him and said, I don't know. He was shocked. He said, Professor is asking a question, the answer he says he does not know. Then Professor Mukherjee turns to me and he says, Father, this problem is part of an unsolved research problem for last 10 years. But you know, this batch is so smart, I thought somebody will solve it. We didn't know what to say. Had this happened in Indore, the Vice Chancellor would have been Gherao. Outside the syllabus. Then I understood what a syllabus is. Syllabus is nothing but a reflection of what knowledge has been accumulated in the past. Whereas I am training students for future. I will tell you, I realized the IIT spirit better that evening when these students of that class, they were from Hostel 4, most of them, they were celebrating with a milkshake party. Milkshake was the costliest item of rejoicement in those days. I am talking about early 70s. I mean, I am not talking of other liquid, fluid, what is generally admissible in a student. So, a milkshake party would be given in a hostel only when that hostel has done something extraordinary. The hostel has won a inter-hostel hockey tournament, or somebody has won a debating prize, something special has happened, then the hostel would celebrate a milkshake party. And the General Secretary walked out into the lounge there and he found these jokers sitting around and enjoying milkshake. He said, "Arey, what has happened? I am General Secretary, I don't know." "Oh, you don't know? The great Professor K.C. Mukherjee thinks that we can solve unsolved research problems." So you see the spirit, not just of teachers but of students. They believe that they are at an advantageous position if they are challenged. How do we create that atmosphere in every educational institution of the country and the world? I would think that should be the true challenge. It is not easy to do so, friends. First of all, if I am a teacher at a place which does not offer such freedom, then I will hesitate in doing it. Second, the amount of teaching load that I have on my head is so substantially more that I do not even have time to think. I barely manage to prepare my subject and teach it in the conventional way. So where is the time to set papers of this kind? I tell you, when I teach a course, to set any test paper takes me at least 8 hours. To set mid-sem paper and end-sem paper is a 3-day affair with my TAs and others. And that's the amount of time you have to spend. Number one, you cannot repeat any question that you yourself have asked. So you have to compose new problems. Then you have to solve that problem and see that the students are able to solve that in a reasonable time, at least much of the problem. Then every problem must have some novelty, which must force students to think. It's not easy, friends. Many of you would have tried it. It's not easy to do it in a set system. It is only in an unset system like IIT is possible. I believe that when we become an autonomous institution, it should be our joint endeavor to move towards that philosophy. IITs have not fallen from the sky. They were also set up by people like us. There were no PhDs then, let me tell you. Professor Saab will remember when in 75 he did his MTech and joined as a faculty member, there were no PhDs. PhDs were just coming. Research culture, even in our IIT system, has started only recently. But teaching culture was there. And this culture that I will make my students learn the fundamentals was very much. We must somehow resurrect that culture. So this is what I call back to basics. Our intentions and our endeavors must be clearly targeted to achieve this. Whether it takes 5 years, 10 years, 15 years or 2 years is our problem. But if we forget this ambition, if we forget this goal, believe me, we will not be creating students who are different. We often complain that students are not good enough. Don't you think that IIT Bombay or IIT Madras or IIT gets all students who are extraordinary? It's not like that. And even extraordinary students, unless they are challenged, they will not bring out the best in them. So that is why teachers' jobs continue to be important. However, the role of a teacher has changed substantially in the last 20 to 25 years. As you know, we talk of digital India. Now, what does it mean for a nation to be digital? How does it change our lives? How will it change our lives in future? How will it change teaching learning? Earlier, when people learn, they learn from teachers, basics of mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, civil engineering. These were the fundamental branches. Other branches came up later. Most of what they studied remained relevant, particularly the basics. Technology was still evolving, but it was evolving at a slow pace. It was getting absorbed at a slow pace, and therefore, if I become an engineer from your institution in, let's say, some year, then at least for the next 15-20 years, I can effectively use the knowledge that I have gained there, because that is the kind of technology I will see around. Things will change slowly. I will perhaps learn on the job. That is how my life formed. And that is how teachers' life. Second and more important, in the very early days when the knowledge was not codified in scripts and all, the knowledge delivery could only happen from a teacher. There is nobody else competent. And therefore, you have to study at the feet of a teacher. So like Ashram Parampara or Guru Parampara, because knowledge was communicated verbally. There is no other mechanism. Then came the printing presses, books. But then books were not easily understood by everyone. Different students understand things differently. Each student requires perhaps a different kind of explanation. But teacher therefore continued to be the epitome of the deliverer of knowledge, either directly or by using some books or whatever. This role continues till date. However, things have substantially changed. In the last 25 years, what has happened? What I could get from a teacher in terms of listening to a lecture and participating in the discussion, I no more need that teacher to deliver that lecture. Better lectures are available and accessible in the digital world. Why do you think young school children are going after Khan Academy? Why do you think MOOCs are so popular? Because if I can learn a subject like machine learning, for example, from Professor Anand Agarwal on EDX from MIT, okay, he is one of the best teachers. Or if I can learn thermodynamics by listening to lectures of Professor Gaitonde and others who are regarded as gods of thermodynamics, you don't need to learn from Phatak. Whatever Phatak will teach in thermodynamics, in terms of the delivery of lecture, will be substantially less useful than whatever he can do. Earlier, people had no access to him. Now they have access to him, to anybody. Consequently, I believe that we as teachers are completely wasting our time if we continue to teach in the conventional mode where we deliver lecture for 1 hour and have some discussion, tutorials, etc. Why? Earlier we were doing it because students had no choice. They could not listen to any more or better explanation from anyone. Today they have a choice. They have a limited choice today because the internet is not completely accessible. Not all basic courses are covered by the best teachers. They are not easily accessible in the context of the way I have to study, because if I am a student here, I have to give exams here and so on. But increasingly over next few years, the delivery of knowledge shall no more be, forget the prime, no more be the responsibility of the teacher. What then should be the responsibility? Is teacher meaningless? Is teacher useless? The answer is no. Teacher in fact is very important, and in these change scenarios, teacher is actually more important than earlier, but in a different way. And I would like to share with you what I believe that role will be. For a moment, change over our focus from teachers to learners or students. In fact, I learned to do that, to admit frankly, only about 7 or 8 years ago. In 46, 47 years of my teaching life, I spent 40 years in improving my teaching. And only in the last 7 years I realized that that does not necessarily improve the learning. So I need to spend time in improving the learning. And then I have to study how people learn. So you look at our students. What is their normal course of activity? They will attend classes. Do they learn a lot when they attend classes? Probably not. Because they are listening to a lecture delivered for 40 minutes, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever the time. We have 1 hour lectures, 55 minutes. In that hour, you tell me, is it possible to consistently be attentive to a teacher speaking for 1 hour, day after day after day, semester long? Somewhere I am a human being. Okay, I might actually be looking at the teacher, but sometimes I will start looking through the teacher. This hall does not have windows, but there are some nice classrooms with windows. I might be tempted to look at the greenery outside. These days there is a lot of greenery in the class also. So there are diversions available, and my mind, being a human mind, will flick from one point to another point to another. A good teacher will recognize. So whenever some push starts or some, after 8-10 minutes he will stop and he will either crack a joke or he will ask a question, bring back the attention. That is what a teacher does. What is teacher trying to do? Teacher is trying to ensure that student maximizes his or her learning by paying attention to what is being said. But with all that, it is now statistically proven that the amount of learning that happens in students' mind during a lecture hour is minimal as compared to other activities. Which are those other activities? One activity is solving for an assignment. Now, at our time, any assignment used to be solved by one student and copied by other students. That may still continue. But in those days, if I have to submit an assignment, I have to at least read that assignment and write. Today in the online assignment, I don't even have to read. Cut and paste. Things have become worse. But still, those who solved the problem or attempted to solve definitely learn something more. The third activity is preparing for exams. Believe me, that is the time a learner learns most. Because the entire mind is focused. I have to crack this exam, get best marks. And best marks means I have to solve problems. So independent of whether I have figured out what question will be asked, what is important, etc., I will still apply my mind. And please note, all of us are aware of this, but we forget. Learning happens when I apply my mind to that subject. It does not happen because somebody is giving me lecture or somebody is throwing problems at me or somebody is assessing. How do you maximize the application of mind of every learner throughout the duration of that course being taught is actually of vital importance. Now, if the lectures are no more required, what could we do? That is where the concept of a flipped classroom, which has evolved. In IIT, we have been attempting that for the last 5 or 6 years. And there are research papers published by our colleagues as well as colleagues all over the world. Convincingly, they say that this flipped classroom methodology does result in far more effective learning. And what is that methodology? All lectures are pre-recorded. You view those lectures on the internet before coming to the class. And the entire class will be only discussion session and problem solving session. In short, what we used to call tutorial. But the way tutorials are conducted is, teacher comes and writes 20 problems and stands like this, and then people solve those 20 problems. That is not a flipped classroom. A teacher will not write 20 problems. Teacher will write one problem and say, all of you solve it. The way I used to conduct flipped classroom for programming course, for example, there will be groups of 6 or 8 students, identified place they have to sit. They will solve a problem. First they have to solve individually. Then we use a method called think, pair, share. That means I have to share my solution with my neighbor and look at my neighbor's solution. And we have to convince each other why my solution is right. You see, what is happening is I am forcing people to apply their mind. Then they will discover the right solution. It is almost like copying, but copying with discussion. Then all the 6 people or 8 people will look at all their solutions, and as a group they will come up with what they call the best solution for that problem. Then I am moving around with my TAs and others, I will pick out randomly 3 such group solutions and bring them to the podium and display one by one each solution. When I display a solution, this was the problem, this is the program that fellow has written. And I said, let the whole class find out if there are any mistakes. You will agree that students are delighted when they have to find mistakes in somebody else's solution. We are all delighted as human beings. But what it means is they apply their mind. And they will look at so carefully, sir, this comma is missing, this semicolon is on this. If statement logic is all nonsense. What is happening? They are all learning. They are learning more. In 1 hour class, I will be able to discuss 3 to 4 programming problems like that, forcing them to work out a solution, discuss among themselves, and then analyze together. This is far more than what I can ever do in 1 hour lecture. Now, it is not straightforward and easy to apply this method for all subjects. Different subjects have different ways of handling it. And we will have to learn in which best way to adapt this. In my belief, the future teaching learning will occur in the following fashion. Majority of the content will be available on the net. In fact, the bigger problem will be that there are too many contents. You talk about the best course in a subject offered by a professor, well, there is a course from an MIT professor, there is a course from Stanford, there is a course from IIT Delhi, there is a course from ETH Zurich, there is a course of the same subject. Now I am a student, and like you, I also have 24 hours in a day. And I have to decide how many hours do I spend on what. You also have 24 hours in a day. So what now is your role? Your role is to tell that student that in the context of studying engineering or whatever subject in the Indian societal context, we believe, and in our syllabus or whatever, we believe that you should study these 4 lectures on this topic from this course, these 5 lectures on this course, 3 more lectures I will deliver giving you localized problems. If I have to do all that, I have to spend much more time in deciding how to guide students of doing it. And that is why I consider that the main role for a teacher in coming years will be that of a facilitator of learning rather than deliverer of knowledge. Of course, today we do both. We try to deliver the knowledge, we also try to facilitate learning. But the second act happens implicitly. That will now have to happen explicitly. The next stage, it will take much longer. This in fact has been identified as a hard problem among the 14 hard problems defined by US National Academy of Engineers, which means that these 14 hard problems will take the entire century to solve. You realize the hardness of the problem. Clean drinking water is one of such problems identified. Affordable solar energy is one of the problems identified. Brain mapping is one of the 14. It is interesting to look at those 14 problems. Their groups have studied for 4, 5, 7 years and then have come up with it. One of the problems they have identified is personalized instructions. Those who work in the area of educational technology or education have realized this fact that different individuals learn differently. Our system, on the other hand, forces a fixed duration syndrome on everybody. You have to learn this much syllabus in this much time. When you think about it, the nonsense is very apparent. I learn differently from this person. He is perhaps smarter, he can read something once and he understands it. I have to read it 4 times. I require more time to master this. But you are telling me no. These 2 lectures, this subject, over. Now if I have not understood that subject or that topic, I have to go to the next one. The online access and such methodology permits me to study longer. In small digression, I would like to mention that there is a serious lacuna in the way we organize our courses also. This is a hypothetical example that I share with most teachers. Slightly hilarious, but it shows a fact. Even in IIT, Bombay or IIT system, which is most flexible. Suppose a first year student comes to IIT Bombay from the town of Hyderabad. Well-to-do family. This fellow has done programming in high school, 10th, 11th, 12th standard. He finds that programming course is compulsory in the first year. He comes and says, "Sir, please excuse me, I don't have to do this course, just take my test." So I send him to head sends him to dean. Dean said, "No, no, no, it's a core course, compulsory course. You have to do 6th grade course." "But sir, I have already studied that." "No, no, then it will be easy for you. But can I not study some other elective in that place?" "No, no, no, this is a core course, it's compulsory. Incidentally, 85% attendance is compulsory." That means that poor fellow has to sit in that boring class throughout the semester to mark 85% attendance, give the exam, probably score 100% marks, unless the student is so bored to death at the end of the semester that he actually scores very poorly also. This is what we are doing to a person who is well studied in that way. On the other hand, consider a boy or a girl from a small village who has not seen a computer in his or her lifetime, but very bright, cracks JEE, comes to the same course. She undergoes that course for 1 week and realizes that it will not be easy for her to pass that course in 1 semester. She comes to the head and says, "Sir, please permit me to study this course for 1 year." "No, no, no, this is a core course only for 1 semester." "Sir, I know I cannot understand this. I am finding it problematic to understand English. That itself will take 2-3 weeks. But I am confident. Give me 1 year, I will study this." And I heard things like that, okay, the system says, "No, this is a course," then, I know how you can study for 1 year. You study for 1 semester. You will fail, of course. Then you re-register next semester. You get 1 full year. But nonsense. I am not getting 1 full year to study the course at my pace. I am getting 6 months to study the whole course, make a batch of it, and then study the same thing again for the next semester, again probably doing the same thing. But our system will not permit this freedom. Because it is logistically not handleable. Imagine you have 50 students in a class, and every student comes up and says, "I will do this in 7 weeks, somebody says 8.5 weeks, somebody says 1 year, somebody says 2 years. How will you handle that? It's a nightmare. So a system cannot permit it. But a personalized instruction of the future will say, you study at your own pace. There will be no college or university giving degrees in a time-bound fashion. You finish your degree in 2 years if you are very smart. You finish your degree in 9 years if you want. It doesn't matter because degree is finally a recognition that you have understood basics of those many subjects. Now such a flexible system when it comes, it means that each individual, suppose I am an individual learner, it is not adequate for you to give me an online MOOCs platform like we do today and we have weekly courses and so on. When I am studying, based on how I study, not just my score and knowledge, but based on whether I study first I view the videos or first I solve problems or whether I directly jump to quizzes, there is a learning model that is being set up for me based on my interaction. And using that learning model, a intelligent system defines that look, Phatak's studying style is this. Now he lacks knowledge of this, this and this. But I will not get the same additional material to study as somebody else gets at the same score. Based on his or her style of study, somebody will get additional quiz problems. I may get additional material to study. Somebody else may get additional lecture. This is called personalized instruction. We are nowhere near it now, but in this coming century, such systems are likely to happen. I would only say that things are changing and things are changing far more rapidly than what we are used to. You just need to go back in life and examine the changes that have happened, forget elsewhere in the world, in India, in last 10 years. Then examine the changes that have happened 20 years prior to that. And examine the changes that have happened in 40 years before that. Not all of you can do that, but some of us oldies can definitely look at it. You will find that there are indications that things are changing exponentially. The conventional classification of subjects in which we have already created silos, and that is another extremely dangerous thing, where our engineering students believe that if I am a computer science student, I must not know anything about mechanical engineering. I must not know anything about electrical engineering, which is a nonsense. Old time at least, although the course was 5 years long, everybody, independent of which branch of engineering you will get your degree in, everybody had to do some basic engineering courses everywhere. But I digress. The point I am making is that going forward, most of the problems to be solved by our engineers in future will be multidisciplinary problems. And we have to very quickly dismantle these silos, or actually make these silos interact with each other by posing problems which are multidisciplinary problems. Our entire BTech project idea is still centered around that discipline, around this lab. Our labs are silos. We need to start working out in small measure first, but to say that multidisciplinary problem solving will happen. Second, use of computers will proliferate like mad. Already you see computerization is governing practically every aspect. Micro technology to nanotechnology to nano manufacturing. Tell me any engineering area where computers are not completely changing the scenario. Whether it is design, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is usage, everywhere it is happening. Are we training our students to cope up with that? Worse, are we telling our students that earlier when you got a degree from here, we were sure that the knowledge that you gain here will be useful to you at least for 5 to 10 years, and you have to do continuous learning thereafter. Today you know what you have to tell them? My dear friend, I am giving you a degree, but I am guaranteeing you that the entire knowledge that you have collected to earn that degree is completely useless the moment you walk out of this gate. Because tomorrow what you will face will be so different. What does it mean? It means we have to train our students on how to learn quickly and effectively. And this dimension, of course you have to give the basic, but you have to give basics not from the point of view of just imparting knowledge, but from the point of view of ensuring that they learn how to adapt these basics, how to learn these basics and how to use them, so that they can continue to learn life. To my students I say that lifelong learning is no more a title in a book, it is to be practiced. And now I will come to teachers again in my concluding part. If what I say is true about normal professionals, isn't it true for us? As teachers, should it not be as obligatory for us to do lifelong learning as we expect future professors to do? How much time are we able to spend? For us also this is the same problem. We are only 24 hours in a day. And therefore, we have to find some time. I don't know how. I determined that I could find time only by a very queer method. I don't advocate that because that's not a very healthy method. It is, again, thanks to Professor Isaac, when he used to come every night, I used to go there every night, and I once asked him, what is that you expect from us? A small interesting anecdote which I must tell you. That was a month when two of my colleagues got married, Professor Sarda and Professor Dandai. And there was a period when none of them were there in the night. So one day Isaac comes and says, where is Sarda? He is not come. 2 days later, where is Dummy? Sir, he has not come. Third day again, he said, I don't find both of them. And I said, sir, they got married recently, have a heart. And you know what he said? What has marriage to do with this? I was shocked. I didn't know what to say. Then he himself understood. He smiled. And he says, Father, we must visit their spouses and tell them that the husbands are primarily meant for the computer science department. Occasionally they will come. That is when I asked him, Jimmy, what do you expect from us? He says, look, Father, unless you can work for 3 days and 3 nights continuously, at least once a week, you are not entitled to teach in this institute. Go find some other job. I am proud that I can still do that today. Because I was trained like that. I was nurtured like that. Now therefore I am saying I am not suggesting such mad methods. Because I don't want lots of divorce to happen in various places. But what I am suggesting is, every one of you can actually optimize the time that you spend and find an extra hour. It's called Phatak's mythical 25th hour. You manage 24 hours well, you can get 1 hour extra something. If you do that, and do try to reduce the time that you spend in other activities by optimally using that time there. Do see movies. You need sleep. Somebody needs 6 hours sleep, somebody needs 8 hours sleep. Different bodies will require different types of. But each one of us can cut down on that average sleep by 15 minutes per day without troubling your health at all. That I can tell you because many of my students have experimented. Simple thing. Whenever you normally feel like we are talking about reducing the average sleeping time, how do you measure that? Normally when you feel like going to sleep, go and pick up some other activity. Read a book on history, read something, write a diary. Most of us don't write diary. Our history is written by others. We have no tradition of writing. We have tradition of talking. We occasionally read and we rarely write. But this will not help. So we have to keep writing, keep doing. So do something. And then exactly after 15 minutes or 20 minutes go to sleep. But that task that you undertake must not be any one of your regular tasks. Then you are cheating. So take some other task of your interest and do that. Believe me, in exactly 3 weeks time you will find that your average sleeping time has reduced by 15 minutes without affecting you. The mad thing that I did is I continued to do that with additional 15 minutes, additional 15 minutes. It's not worth it. The moral of the story, my dear friends, is if we want to change our roles from deliverers of knowledge to facilitators of learning, then we ourselves have to learn more. And we ourselves have to therefore optimize our time and find this extra time. Believe me, if you do that, you can easily find 1 or 2 hours a week extra. Use these 1 or 2 hours a week extra to do something very diligent. Form small groups. Form groups which will attempt to solve hard problems. I want to challenge my students. Do I challenge all the top students? Very rare. Please remember this. This is a mistake I made. Many of you will be making. Ordinarily we teach to the average of the class. That is our normal mode. If there are some laggards, and there are there in every class, they will come for difficulties, we are very sympathetic to them and we spend a lot of time in helping them. Very nice. But what do we do about the 10 toppers in the class? Nothing. We assume that they will take care of themselves. And therefore, they remain unchallenged throughout their stay in the institution. When I teach a course, I call such toppers every Sunday morning for half an hour, giving them hard problems. Saying, you think you are big genius? Abhi ye dekho. But to pose those hard problems, I have to think more and I have to work with them. I have seen many people doing this. I'll just give one more example of where I saw this different trait many years ago. It was mentioned that I started Eklavya project. Actually, I took 1 year sabbatical in 2001 and went around the country visiting small colleges. I deliberately avoided IITs, NIT, smaller colleges. I could go to only 67 places, and every place I was looking for exceptions. So I would typically spend a day looking at the final year projects of computer science or IT students. They will make presentations. Every place without exception I found a few students, 4 or 5 students in that batch of 50. who were different, who had applied their mind. They could not speak good English, but they had applied their mind, they were intelligent, they were trying to solve a problem genuinely on their own. I would love to have them any time in IIT Bombay, they were that good. Such is the talent, my dear friends, spread across, but we don't know where that talent is. And in every place without exception, I came across one or two teachers who were different, who were literally doing justice to the term teacher. So I'll give you just one example where I saw many places. I think this was in Odisha somewhere, Behram, I believe, I don't remember exactly. I used to ask this question that to the teachers, that you have these labs, and I used to say, what different do you do? What different, what do you think? One teacher sheepishly said, sir, I run a Sunday morning lab, the electronics. So I said, beg your pardon? So he said, sir, I take up a problem, then the students assemble every Sunday 9 to 12. They first analyze the problem, then they have alternate designs, then we fabricate these alternate designs, and by the end of the semester, each circuit is evaluated, assessed, parameters measured, etc. I said, wonderful. So do all students come? He said, no sir, 15-20 लोग आते हैं. The class of 120 or whatever, only 20 students come, 50 students come. I said, but my dear friend, these 15 students are coming with full understanding that this work has nothing to do with syllabus, and they are still spending their time throughout the semester. You know what you are doing is extraordinary, because these 15 people have the capability to contribute to the society in a non-linear fashion. All others will contribute in a linear fashion. Now, don't you agree that each one of us must spend some little time with at least 4 or 5 such top students? Believe me, when I do that, I also learn a lot. Because many of these top students are not only intellectually more brilliant than me, but they are capable of solving much harder problems. This is what I would like to suggest. But have one thing with certainty, that the role that we have spent our lives earlier will not be the role anymore. We may continue to do that, and the society may pardon us, because the society itself does not understand what the institution of a teacher which it established thousands of years ago is expected to do now. We must realize that, and we must do something. This country is full of problems, people say, but I think this country is full of opportunities. Look at the beauty of this nation, Mike. You all know that. How many different languages? 22 are recognized by the Constitution. All major religions of the world? Okay. All kinds of clans and whatever groups and everything in this society. And as an added attraction, we specialize in fighting over each of these points with everyone. And yet, in spite of all that, we have lived proudly like a single nation. In spite of all that, whenever there is a problem facing the nation, the whole nation unites. That is the beauty. There is no other nation on the face of this earth where you can have so much diversity living together. I wouldn't say peacefully, but our endeavor should be to give such values to our students that they will respect good citizenship, they will respect peaceful life, they will learn to respect everyone else. These value systems also have to be imbibed. I would think that is an additional important role for the teachers, although it is not listed in the AICTE framework. Giving values to students, generating respect among the students for everyone else, no matter what language, what religion that person is from. Telling them what great this nation is, it is great because of this diversity. I think we have our hands full, friends. I am just requesting all of you to think about it and try to do whatever little we can. After all, there is a limit up to it, because we also have 24 hours in a day, but optimize that time, and I am very sure you will do as wonderful things as possible. And please spread the message. Thank you so much.
I just missed few words as Padma Shri Deepak Pathak. Deepak means in Marathi is called torch and light, and I am very sure that he will train all the teachers in India under national mission through ICT, along with our respected chairman of the ICT, Professor Anil Sahasrabudhe, is a teacher of mine, and I am also thank all the members coming at the right time to this hall. First time, there is no need for me to call any head today for any explanation. Otherwise, I have to call at least 10 and 12 times to various people, and I ensure that we will maintain such tradition for all the expert speakers hereafter, and we able to learn many things from the renowned speakers. With this, I thank everybody and for attending this class. Thank you.
Any questions, 5 minutes? Maybe.
Sir, you invited all my colleagues. So far we are viewing you through online only. It's on behalf of all my colleagues, it's our opportunity to see a lecture by you. And as part of it, you shared your experiences during college education and also your professional career also. And the change in role of teaching human life, the concept of a teacher, the conventional systems versus IIT system, and the future teaching and learning systems, and the challenges to be faced by the teaching community. So with your permission, now my colleagues want to, one or two, sir. They want to have some questions.
Sure.
Yes, I request any of my colleagues, they can ask one or two questions.
Sir.
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
Please be seated.
Sir, we have so many universities, so many colleges with a lot of equipments. And I feel that in a semester, one machine for one lab is used only once. So in India, we have thousands of colleges and so much assets are kept without use. So as you are the head of this thing, what we can do in this?
So couple of things. First of all, such replication is important because assembling students synchronously to do an experiment with a machine cannot be done because the machine has to stay at one place and you cannot assemble thousands of students from different places to come to that place. Just like many common things are replicated although they are not required, many times they are used only once. But the second and more important point is that virtual labs, which originally were meant only to provide esoteric labs, might soon become labs with a lot more detailed explanation including simulation and animation would be useful to replace usage of very large and costly infrastructure facility. However, it is my personal opinion that in engineering you can never ever negate the requirement of a physical equipment which is required to be handled. At the end of the day, engineers have to dirty their hands. One supplementary thing which I can suggest is, and I'm happy that you have a lab called Innovation Lab, but such Tinkerer's Lab where students can tinker around with small things as a precursor to doing larger labs is one possibility. The second possibility is not really easy to do, where neighboring institutions can share some costly equipment by timetable. But I tell you, logistics will be your biggest problem. Because all institutions will have their own timetable and nobody would like to modify my timetable for your sake. So it's not an easy problem to solve. Most probably, two things will continue to happen. One is such investment in specialized equipment will be done. Perhaps what you can do is, instead of having only one single purpose equipment, you can have design an experiment or a machine which is multi-purpose facility, so that some part of that, functionality of that machine can be used for some experiment, some part from some other experiment. I am no expert in that, but there will be occasions where some facility will be used only for a limited period of time. It is our call as engineering teachers to decide whether that can be completely got rid of. I cannot do that unless there is a replacement for that kind of learning through animation or whatever it is. But some amount of this replication is unavoidable, at least knowing the conventional engineering element. That is, you can just optimize, try to optimize it.
Sir,
Yeah,
I have two questions, sir, from very general perspective.
please.
I'm fundamentally not an engineer, and that's why the questions happen to be general. The first is, sir, in the light of all the differentiated instructions and alternative methodologies that you've been talking about, you would agree that a lot of planning, a lot of strategizing needs to go into the learning sessions.
Yes.
So given the context of publish/present or perish academic culture that most of us work under, how much of this can actually be incentivized? And the second question is, some of us have been trying to experiment with this flipped classroom concept. But what we find is, most of the times, learners do not have the sufficient motivation levels to actually go through the material or the videos or whatever, then come to the class. Again, we are back to square number one. So, how to deal with that?
So about the first part, how to incentivize people. Unfortunately, when it comes to incentivization, grown-ups behave exactly like children. So incentivization has to be in terms of some directly visible material benefit. So either the material benefit should be free lunch, free whatever, as we did in our FDPs. But there is no free lunch in the world, and ministry has told us that they will not support it. The second thing is recognition in one's career path. Now this is what Anil Sastapati has said, that these FDPs, because he believes that all our teachers, 3 lakh teachers, have to be trained in use of ICT in education and use of pedagogy for best combination of online and face-to-face learning. And as I said, there are no experts even in the world today. This is a new area that is upcoming. All of us will have to decide to do that. But as an incentive, what he is saying is he will attempt to do 2 things. One, which is immediate and he has done. These FDPs will be recognized as proper FDPs because they are AICT recognized FDPs in the CAS and various other things. These will earn some brownie points. But more important, he is likely to request the council to make these 2 courses obligatory for every teacher. Once it is obligatory, I don't have to incentivize. My salary itself will not come if I have not done it. Now that is a great incentive, right?
The context is actually slightly different. It's publish/present. Because all the time the focus of the teacher, especially in the university context, is also on research.
Oh.
That's the context.
My colleague, Professor Abhiram Ranade, has written articles and I entirely agree with it. I think it is stupid to expect every teacher in every university to do research. You see, I may be cut out for good teaching, I may not be cut out for good research. Even if I am cut out for good research, the facilities around me and the environment around me is not conducive. In my environment, if I see some useless papers being published every now and then, I will think that is what is research. I would think that research should be done by those who are truly desirous of doing so. I would think that incentivizing more people to do good quality research is important. But I think to insist that everybody must do research is not very correct, not very fair. However, I am not the system, so the and you know, human being, particularly in India, we are so innovative. We will do some jugaad. I know of 2 conferences in 2 different cities. And I was very curious because the conference apparently was gaining popularity, more papers were getting published. When I studied, in one conference, papers of the colleges of other city were published. In the other conference, papers of the colleges of this city were published. And the other college teachers were citing these papers. So the citation also went up. Beautiful system. What else do you think? There are journals, there are conferences which have an impact factor even in the first conference. I mean, first conference, how can it have an impact factor? It has an impact factor. So, we are good at figuring these things out. System will take its own time to figure out that people have figured it out. And they will counter it somehow. I don't see how that can be done. My answer is very simple. My answer is, see, a teacher or anybody for that matter, my understanding of the common human trait is that if I am employed in some profession, whatever it is, including teacher, I do not want to deliberately do a bad. I am a human being, I would also like to be recognized as somebody who is doing good things. So if at all I do not do good things, it may be because A, I am not capable yet, B, nobody has tried to help me to become capable, 3, I have not been given enough time to do better, and 4, there are shortcuts like such conference publishing which will help me achieve this. Now, if that incentive can be given through peer group pressures, believe me, peer group works very well. At least the whole IIT system works because of peer pressure. I don't need a fatwa from director or vice chancellor or anybody. If my colleague finds out that I have given some shit spot problem in my quiz and he is invigilating, he comes to my office and fires me for half an hour. And he makes sure that he continues firing me for half an hour so that I realize that had I used that half an hour, I would have set up a better one. So, but why can't we set that mechanism? As I said, IITs are not fallen from the sky. They are the same people. Like you, I was also a student, like sir, some college we studied. But this, we were helped to transform our thinking. And we had to slog hard. There is no substitute for hard work. That is 100%. So it is possible to do that. And that is the incentivization. What was the second question?
The learner interest, sir.
Yeah, the learner interest. You see, what are the learners whom we face? They are the learners who have studied all through their schooling system using conventional learning. Now they come to the college. They are all used to the fact that you will give 1 hour lecture and you will give. So now, how they will change suddenly? You have to spend time in talking to them, telling them the advantages. We faced Kannan, who was pioneer in flipped classroom, when he said you will study these, view these lectures and come to the class, he found out that people had not viewed those. They do this. I can't control what they do. Then what he started doing, every class, first 2 minutes he will conduct a test using Akashtan. The test will be very simple, but it will find out whether you have viewed that lecture or not. And he will associate some half mark with that quiz. Any student, including IIT students, you give something with half mark, they will work. You say you will gain knowledge, they will not work. This is common sense. Such things we can do. I think all of us can discuss endlessly on this issue. I would only suggest that please continue such endless discussion, something new will come out. And if you discover something different, please let us also know. Because in this game we are all together. Nobody is an expert, all of us are together.
Sir, this is Panikumar, sir, remote center coordinator. First of all, we have to thank you. Okay, so with your support and all, for the last 4 years, we are able to conduct 17 FDPs in this remote center. Okay, I can proudly say.
This is the place where you conduct them?
Yes, sir. And all these faculty members, they have participated in 1 or more programs. Okay, and we should be thankful to you for all your support. Okay, from the right Bombay and Kharagpur.
Then I have a problem.
Right.
Because most of the things that I have shared, somewhere or the other I have said. So, you see, my assumption was that I can keep repeating point because the audience is different every time. Same audience, that is cheating. But you know, some of my colleagues say that your talks work in the digital domain, so there are variations every now and then. So that should be okay.
One last question, sir, regarding these MOOCs and all. So can we expect any guidelines from UGC and ACD regarding the online courses credit transfer? Okay. And
AICD has already issued the guidelines Because I chair the committee appointed by ICT, which clearly states 20% of the credits in a program can be obtained through MOOCs. Now, we have to work on that to say that MOOCs or blended MOOC, because 20% is a generic figure. It is neither here nor there. Every autonomous institution is expected to work out which are the courses which can be easily and properly studied on MOOCs, and say we will do this. Which are the courses in which MOOCs could be used as a supplement, so that your actual assessment is still convention, but you do much of the assessment online and factor those marks. These things are being deliberated. I will be personally making a presentation to the council in the next 2 months, and something will come out. But my contention is current directions issued by ICT are good enough for autonomous institutions to take it up. The problem is with us and our systems. I will not take suo moto action unless somebody permits me to do that. So I will wait for permission. But if I am autonomous, I don't need permission is something I forget. This syndrome is there with everyone, including IIT system. My suggestion is, you are one of the few institutions in this country who have that freedom. I think your management, your academic bodies could apply their mind and start doing something on an experimental basis, okay, which can become in fact a harbinger for others. But for that, adequate permissions from UGC and AICT exist as of now. So thanks for reminding this. I'll go back and dig out some official letter. The official letters are many times funny, but English is such a beautiful language that you can interpret whatever you want. Use your autonomy to do that.
Sir, on behalf of my colleagues, you have scheduled a program at the Geetam University on our invitation. You are busy on this day at IIT Hyderabad. I thank you and profusely, and we are very gratitude to listen your lecture for today. For this 45-minute session went just like this.
I lost track of time.
Okay, no problem, sir, no problem. Thank you, sir, once again. Thank you, and wish you all the best. Thank you.